Hey, party people! Welcome once again to the Party of One podcast, the actual play RPG podcast where the gaming table is always set for two. I'm your host, as always, Jeff Stormer. This week I am joined by Kiva Fecteau for a game of A Cool and Lonely Courage by Alex White. A Cool and Lonely Courage tells the stories of the women of the Special Operations Executive in World War II. A group of ordinary women trained as spies and dispatched on covert missions in Nazi-occupied France in World War II. These women accomplished amazing things, overcame unbelievable adversity and obstacles, and were largely, unfortunately, captured by Nazis, and their contributions were not widely known until very recently when their dossiers were declassified. In A Cool and Lonely Courage, we will tell the stories of these women, what they accomplished, what they endured, and who told their stories, whether it was them or someone near them after the war. A Cool and Lonely Courage goes live on Kickstarter on May 7th. Be sure to check that out. There will be a link in the show notes as soon as that Kickstarter goes live. In the meantime, follow the game's creator, Alex White, on Twitter at @NAlexWhite for more information. You can find links to all of that cool stuff in the show notes. Kiva is the owner of Gold Dragon Games and the board game director of the Big Frederick Gaming Convention, both of which you can find links to in the show notes below. Lastly, before we dive in, I do want to take a brief moment and tell you about a project that's really important to me and close to my heart that I think you should check out. That is the Babylon Equity Project. The BOEP is a crowdfunding campaign that is currently live, focused on bringing people of color to Big Bad Con in California. It is a tangible, actionable campaign focused on increasing representation at conventions and making tabletop a more inclusive place, which I think is, if you know the show at all, you know is really important to me. So I think this is a project that is good and important that you should check out. You can find more information about the BOEP, the Babylon Equity Project, in the show notes. With all that said, let's throw it over to me in the past so that he can get started with the show. Take it past me. Thanks, future me. This week, I'm sitting down with Kiva Fecteau. Kiva, thank you so much for coming on Party of One.
It sounds like it's going to be a huge blast. I'm happy to be here.
I'm super excited to have you on the show. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. So real quick, before we dive in, why don't you take a moment and let the lovely listeners at home know about any projects you've got going on, games you'd like them to know about, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm working on a number of games, as is almost always the case. I have one...
I know that feel.
Very small one published, but it's not available, so I'm not even going to bother talking about that. The other biggest event in my life lately in gaming is that for this past year, I was director of board games for a fairly new convention in Frederick, Maryland called Big Frederick Gaming Convention. And so that's been pretty exciting.
That's awesome. So is the con coming up or has it just passed?
It just passed. It took place in March. We just had its second year, and it went from 450 people its first year to over 1,000 the second year.
That's pretty good growth. How did the second year go? Was it better than the first year?
I wasn't able to go the first year because even though it's 15 miles from my house and I was really excited about a local convention, it was the same weekend as Unpub that I was already scheduled to be at. So I did some back-end support, but this year the two did not conflict, and I was able to be there, and there were so many people coming up to me and saying, this is really a fun convention. We really had a great time. I'm going to bring more family and friends next year.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. That's fantastic. Oh, that's so good. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm glad that it went well, and I'm glad that you get to kind of enjoy that sort of post-convention, a project went well space.
Yes, and no more spreadsheets in my future for at least a little while. Good.
If you could... I say good as if I don't live every moment of my life looking at a spreadsheet, if I don't think the words... I don't think the words, oh man, I get to make a spreadsheet today, doesn't fill my heart with a particular kind of glee.
I enjoy spreadsheets. I was just doing a heck of a lot of it for a while.
Oh, sure. I can imagine the sort of admin work spreadsheets that go into planning, the board game section of a convention cannot be, easy.
No, so arranging games, arranging people, and all kinds of tournaments, all kinds of other stuff. But it all went off just about without hitch, so that was fantastic.
I think that's about the best thing you can kind of hope for, is that it goes off, smoothly.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Well, so this week, we are playing A Cool and Lonely Courage, The Women of the SOE by Alex White. It is a game about the women of the Special Operations Executive during World War II. This game is sort of the triumphs and tribulations of this group of special agents in World War II, a British World War II organization formed in July of 1940, conducting sabotage, espionage, and reconnaissance in occupied Europe against the Axis powers. trained as spies and commandos. They were women out on the front line doing top secret operations that were only sort of recently declassified and sort of revealed the scope of their operations to sort of the world at large. Many of which were captured and were, held as prisoners. And now we're going to kind of share some of their stories. As we play, I'm going to call out from the rulebook some of the real life stories of the women of the SOE. And we're going to sort of play out 2 of their stories. We're each going to play one of the women of the SOE. We're going to tell sort of their triumph, how they were captured, and what happened to them sort of as they were captured, and then what happened to them, or at least the people telling their story afterwards. So, all that said, obviously this is going to be a fairly heavy game, especially because at the start of the game we are both sort of in Nazi captivity in World War II. There's going to be some heavy content, some heavy themes. So let's talk about safety up front. Safety is very important. It's going to be the kind of thing that really makes us comfortable, makes the listeners comfortable. It is the key to the engine of the fun game that we're going to play. First, as always, we on Party of One use a system called Cut and Break. If you need to slow things down, if things are getting a little intense, just say the word break, and we will transition to a new scene or move to a different subject. Something to sort of take a little bit of that pressure off. We don't need to break the scene. We don't need to stop the scene. It'll just kind of ease our way into a new area. Secondly, if we need to hard stop for any reason, whether that is we've hit something that makes one of us uncomfortable, or we just need to go answer the door or something, we can always say cut in the middle of a scene. We will stop. We can talk it out. We don't have to. And we will sort of pause, hard stop, regroup, and, pick back up again afterwards. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Fantastic. This game we are also using lines and veils. Lines being things that are hard off limits, will not come up in play under any circumstances. Veils being things that you can talk about them, they can come up, but we sort of keep a respectable distance. For me, my lines are the easy ones being anything racist, sexist, homophobic, etc. None of that stuff will come up to the best of my ability. And specifically outside of that, I have veils on anything sort of eye-related injury, and for the purposes of this game, torture and I guess I'd call it like authoritarian violence is something that I prefer to approach sort of with at like arm's length, because it squicks me. So I'd rather approach that from arm's length, from a respectful distance, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Sure it does.
Do you have any lines or veils you'd like to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty good for me, too.
Okay, perfect. Then, with that said, now that we know our safety stuff, we will dive into the game proper. So the first thing we need to do to play this game is we need characters. So we will go through character creation. The whole game is played with a deck of cards. If you have one in front of you, great. If not, I can draw cards and sort of read them off to you.
I do have one.
Fantastic. So the first thing we're going to do, let me find the character creation section. So we have a checklist of questions that we are going to answer to create our SOE agents. Firstly, the women chosen for this special operations executive had to be completely fluent in French. So the first question that we are going to ask one another, we're going to answer for each other, is why does your character speak French? You are a woman living in England in 1940. You speak fluent French. Why is that?
Well, I had come to England to study music and theater, and one of my instructors was French, and after my studies, we kept seeing each other and eventually married. So
lovely.
We've tried to speak French at home as much as possible.
I love that. What instrument did you play? Or instruments, I should say.
I was mostly a voice. I was interested in musical theater and voice. And I figured that because of a lot of works in the musical genre, especially in voice, are in German or Italian or French, that I should study those languages a little as well.
So are you fluent in all of those languages, or just in French with sort of dabbling in German and Italian?
Just in French because of my husband and because we try to have conversational time with this. The others, it was mostly learning some of the technical language and learning the operatic language is not something that you would necessarily speak on the streets. So I understand how to pronounce things and how to say things, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to speak well to someone else.
Gotcha. I think I speak French. I kind of like... I speak French because my family speaks French because we are French immigrants into England. Mm-hmm. They were, they moved from France, from like a farming community to France to like the big city of London. And they kept up the language at home because it was the language they were comfortable with, but they sort of wanted to get out of that sort of rural, farmland community. They wanted to change. They came to London. It was the most jarring change they could make, but they kept that piece of their upbringing. So I spoke French as a child, and that was kind of a link to my heritage and generations past.
Very nice.
So, we've kind of hit a little bit about our nationality and name. The women who fought in the SOE came from a wide range of backgrounds. We're going to pick a nationality, your normal name, and your background before joining the SOE.
All right, so my nationality before joining the SOE was American. I actually grew up in the Baltimore area, but I wanted to study not in the United States. I wanted to study in France, actually, but with the war picking up, it didn't seem safe to study there or Italy, so I landed in England and studied at Cambridge. My name is Annette Paget, née Baxter. So it was Annette Baxter as I lived in the U.S., and then after I married, of course, it was Annette Paget.
My name is... I'm going to go Adele, and I'm going to go Adele... I'm going to look up a French saint real quick, just so I can give a good Adele Saint Adderald. It's a good name. I like that. So my name is Adele Saint Adderald. Adele is, like I said, French. I'd say first generation of English immigrant hailing from like a small farming community of France. So my nationality, I would say, is British. My parents would say they were French, but they came here to sort of raise me, under a new environment. So like I am English, but I have a strong French background. Mm-hmm. And so what is and I think my background, like the background that I have, women from all backgrounds were chosen to work for the SOE. I think that my background is, as I grew up in the city, I'm trying to decide what I would like what I think I grew up to be. I kind of like being a clerk. I like that I got a job in an office or in like a factory, in the sort of the front office of a factory. And that like it is, I'm very good at administrative tasks, I think.
Always a use for that.
Yeah, I grew up around like offices and, my parents wanted the big city experience, and they gave me the biggest city experience I could get. And in turn, like I just ended up in a very big city profession, working the mail for like a large sort of industrial factory. So, why did you join the Special Operations Executive?
Well, my husband, coming from France himself, felt very strongly when the war started hitting France, of course, and he didn't feel he could go back to his country to fight, but joined the Royal Navy, and I fully supported him in that, of course. But along the way, a year or so ago, I heard that his ship was lost at sea. Now, I know I could hold out hope that he was still alive, but I'm not sure that's practical, considering we have a war going on, and we each need to do the most that we can for this war. So just holding out hope isn't really an option right now. I feel like to honor his memory, I need to do the most that I can.
I think that's largely the same reason that I joined. I think it was, France is a home away from home for me, and I needed to do what I could to make it right. And, I'm not I'm not really equipped for a lot of things, but I'm damn good at handling the mail and at filing things, and so I tried to sign up sort of in an administrative role, and sort of ended up here. Sort of ended up, they said they found a better use for me than just, like, handing soldiers letter. They said they found a better use for somebody with my kind of skill set, and so I've kind of been placed here. I think I joined up with a hope of doing something, and they just sort of put me into this operation without almost fully kind of conveying to me what I was going to be up to.
So you will obviously be doing more than just something.
A little bit. So, we've been accepted for training. We were sent to a remote country estate in Scotland where we were given commando training, escape and evasion, how to kill with guns, knives, or bare hands, how to derail trains and blow up bridges. We received full, after we received our full training, we were sent to the spy finishing school at Bolo for wireless training, encoding transmissions using poem codes, how to resist interrogation, how to break into buildings, and live as a spy. So my question for you, what did you discover that you were great at during training?
Well, having been in musical theater and played many parts, I found I was very good at disguising myself, acting as different parts, right? So not being myself, putting on myself whatever characteristics I needed to get through a situation.
I found that I was very cool under pressure, even when I was, like, holding a gun or, like, swinging a knife. It felt, they handed me a gun and told me to shoot a target, and it felt stressful at a moment until I kind of closed my eyes and thought, well, this is the job. This is what has to happen for the job to get done. And sort of having those mantras, a lot of the stuff that working in a stressful office kind of gives you, those mantras of, like, I just have to get this task done. These are the things that have to happen. I found they were weirdly helpful on the field. And so it ended up giving me a lot of, like, cool under pressure experience where I didn't necessarily get that. The hairs on the back of my neck didn't necessarily rise when I had to pull a gun out of a side holster. I just said, I could close my eyes and think, this is the job, this is what happens, and here's how the job is accomplished.
That's a very practical way to approach it.
Yeah. On the other hand, what weakness was exposed that nearly kept you out of the SOE?
Oh, I have massive trust issues when it comes to something like this. As an actress, right, when I go into character, I expect that everybody else around me is also in character and not really who they seem to be. And I found a little trouble with that when I was actually going through the training, was trusting that these were actually my compatriots when they were acting other parts.
Love that. I'm going to go with, I definitely write down too much. I think that being an admin, being an office director, and being an office manager, I'm definitely the kind of person to, like, make notes on things and, like, correct mistakes, like, without even thinking about it. I'm like, no, that address is wrong. And so I will regularly leave notes and leave that little touch of evidence that constantly got me called out as, like, this is going to be what gets you taken in. And I can't quite help it because there's just that part of me that has to make sure all of my T's are crossed and my I's dotted. Mm-hmm. So, the last stage of our training was we were either specialized as wireless operators, responsible for communications with home, or training as a courier who could travel safely in the daytime. Most of the people sent into France as wireless transmitters only had a life expectancy of 6 weeks. You will still be doing all kinds of reconnaissance, espionage, and sabotage as well, but which direction did your training focus on? Wireless transmission or as a courier?
I don't really have a lot of experience in technology or sitting in a position. Mine is much more interacting with people, so I went the courier route.
I think I did the same. I think that, my specialty, I know my way around documents. I know my way around documentation. So I think having us both as couriers feels like the right option. Mm-hmm. So, our training complete. We flew out on a Moon Squadron aircraft, dropped into France in the dead of night. The flight was cold, dark, and noisy. The pilot is very friendly, although he only knows us by our code name. He's made many drops and encouraged us with his confidence in us. You'll be great, he said, using your code name. Your code name is a French forename. This is the only way you'll be known in France. What is it?
There was some story that I heard when I was in school about some spunky young girl that I really enjoy. I don't remember the story, but her name was Lisette. So I am going to be Lisette.
I am going to go with, mine is Francois. They know me as Francois. So, we are now ready to play out our lives in German-occupied France. There are soldiers everywhere. The officers eat and drink at the best places. The soldiers drink in the bars and cafes. People are often stopped for papers. The Gestapo seem to be everywhere. People are afraid. Some others are collaborators. Some are angry with the Allies, and some will aid the resistance in whatever way they can, but they all look the same to us. Now we are going to play out 5 chapters. There are kind of 2 ways that chapters can play out. One, either way, a chapter will begin with each of us flipping a card from the top card of our deck of cards. The suit of the card will indicate what unfolds. Hearts are scenes of love that could be love lost, love found, love remembered, or love hoped for. Diamonds are success for the resistance. It could be a personal success, a success in the mission, or helping someone else to be successful. Clubs are misfortune, a mistake, or setback for the resistance. It might be made by you. It might be made by someone you are working with. It might be a mistake by your handlers back in Britain, of which sadly there were many. Or spades are death. This is someone you know dying. It could be a family member. It could be an SOE agent. It could be the French resistance. It could be, someone has died. So we're going to flip a card, note the suit, and then we can either play out a brief scene with the 2 of us, introducing new background characters, side characters, etc., or we can give a brief narration of how the scene unfolds if you have a clear idea. And in that case, we can both throw out ideas and sort of help shape kind of that narration. It really just depends on what your preference is in terms of play. Our first scene is Arrival. A slice of life and relationships, getting to know the people in our circuit, members of the SOE, some of whom we may know from recruitment or training, full-time members of the Resistance, and ordinary people risking their lives to help and support our work. So, would you like to go first, or shall I?
I will go first, I suppose. My first card is a diamond.
All right, diamond. Success for the Resistance. Would you like to play out a scene or narrate what is unfolding?
I think for now I will narrate.
Okay.
So I was introduced to the members of my circuit, and we seem to get along very well. That there is one other person from our training there, Claudia. So I went in knowing somebody already, which gave me a feeling of some comfort at least. We have a place to stay, which is fantastic. It's there's a cave that our group uses as its semi-headquarters, I suppose. And so I am firmly ensconced in this group and looking forward to seeing where we go from here.
Wonderful. I've also drawn a diamond, so a success for the Resistance. I think in this case, our circuit is a well-oiled machine, and I think I fit very neatly into that. I think our kind of specialty is intercepting and moving covert messages through mailrooms. That's sort of the specialty of the circuit that I've been deployed to, and that feels like a real natural fit for me, right? And hearing this and knowing that I'm surrounded by people whose specialty it is to do that and to work in those environments, I can very quickly pick up on what's expected and what the best approaches are for handling yourself in that sort of environment. Ironically, the best approach is to just act like you belonged and to simply present yourself as if there's no reason for you not to be there. And that's the lesson that I very quickly pick up on is, appropriately enough, if you treat it like it's your job, people will act as if it is your job. Now, before we transition to our next scene, I'm going to read some segments from the book in between scenes, as there are some wonderful real-life examples of the women of the SOE. Looking at diamonds, we have Andre Borel was taken to a safe house and the next day wandered through town, looking at soldiers and crowded trains, picking up tips about identity cards and the use of ration tickets. Next up, we have our mission. There are many kinds of missions: sabotage, reconnaissance, assassination, courier, wireless transmitting. The Nazis will be brutal in retaliation against both the resistance and the local population that they will happily blame for problems. So, being stopped and having your forged papers checked was always a risk. Finding somewhere safe for wireless transmission is always a risk. So, this is on the field. This is how things are going on the mission. Before either of us dives in, let's look at a real life example. I'm going to flip a card and draw diamonds. Pearl Witherington took responsibility for the wrestler Maquis network after the leader was captured, and she was able to turn 4,000 men into a highly effective guerrilla force that harassed and pinned down Nazi forces many times their number. Some men wanted to arrange things with military ranks, but she stood her ground and maintained her leadership and the respect of the Maquis. So would you like to play out your scene first, or shall I?
Why don't you go first this time?
I will. Let's do it. I'm going to flip. Ooh, a heart. Love. I think I will... I think I'd like to maybe play out a scene with both of our characters. I think that, like, being that we're both couriers, we probably both know each other, and I feel like it's a neat way, it's a natural way for us to kind of have interactions with our characters if we kind of know each other.
Sure.
And I'd love to have a brief scene where maybe we are briefly deployed on the same assignment, right?
Okay.
And we are briefly kind of, whatever operations you're running, you have free reign to sort of dictate that in your scene. But I think briefly we kind of cross paths in one of these Nazi kind of mailroom situations. The things that I'm sort of, the mission that I'm running is basically getting mail lost. Like, causing friction for the military machine by virtue of handing the wrong letter to the wrong person.
Sounds great.
So we briefly cross paths. I am handing off mail, and, you are, I think at this moment, handing off like a covert message. And I briefly kind of hand you a report without realizing that it is a report on the status of the ship that your husband had, that your husband was on when it went AWOL. So, think you can make this disappear?
I don't know. Let me see what it is. It seems to be a naval report of some sort. Attack at some coordinates here. Oh, wow. The name of that ship, the Stardust, that was my husband's ship. Oh.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize.
This report is glorifying and having sunk that ship amongst others, so the reports I got of him being lost at sea are true. Yes, I can definitely make this disappear. I do not want his name given to Germans to shout out their glorified actions. No, this is going to disappear. If I have to eat it myself, it will be gone.
I don't think we'll need anything that severe, but I'm sorry that you had to get confirmation this way, but at least between the two of us, we can make it that his memory will be on our terms and not theirs.
Yes, that is very important for me at this moment. Thank you so much, Adele, for inadvertently handing me this to deal with, of all things.
I can't say I'm unhappy with the decision, all things considered, but we make it disappear. We end it on our terms, and if they still think those ships are deployed at sea for a few more days, then maybe that buys some time for supply runners out of the docks to get their supplies to safe harbor.
That is true. I'm looking for ways to sabotage their efforts, and this seems like a grand way to do that.
Good. I'm proud of us.
You know, I am too.
Good. Then, well, I suppose until we cross paths again, my friend.
Yes,
remember what they taught you at Bolo.
Yes, definitely. And we shouldn't be seen talking together too much. So I will be on my way.
Head on a swivel.
Yes.
Mail call. And I think that's scene.
That is scene.
I like our two. I like our two characters. I'm liking them a lot.
Very cool.
So young and full of promise.
Yes. Well, have to be, right? To be able to volunteer for this and think something good can come of it.
Of course. So why don't you draw your card and decide if you'd like to play out a scene or narrate?
Oh, my next card is Spades.
Death.
Death indeed. Well, the death of my husband has just been confirmed, so that was the last scene. So in this scene... All right, so we have a protocol for making such reports disappear. There are a variety of handoffs I have to go through to hand it to one person who will then give it to someone else to essentially make sure that it gets lost. I am looking for the next person that I'm supposed to hand this to and having difficulty finding that person. So I'm going on to the next person, which I'm hoping you can play, who can maybe help me find the courier that I'm supposed to be handing this off to. So I think, head back to not exactly headquarters, but we have a secondary rendezvous point. So I head there, knowing that I will find somebody there I can talk to, since I haven't been able to find the person named Jaunet that I'm supposed to be handing this to find out, was she delayed or what's happened.
Perfect.
So,
and I will be playing, like a rendezvous. I think our secondary rendezvous point is like the basement of a small coffee shop, or like sort of the basement pantry. So you have to like go around the corner from a coffee shop down the street a little bit. And it's sort of where the sort of ragtag numbers of your circuit are kind of hanging out. And when you walk in, it is a rough scene. Everyone is kind of covered in soot, and people are panting and like dabbing their foreheads. And Captain Ronald Ludo is sort of the head of this circuit, and is just sitting there, hands on his knees, sitting on a bag of coffee beans, just like shaking his head and kind of muttering to himself.
Why? What's happened?
There was complications on mission. Aren't you supposed to be deployed?
I am. I was looking for my contact to hand something off to her, and she wasn't where we were to have met.
Who was... Well, I mean, I have an idea, but who was your contact?
My contact was Jaunet.
Jaunet, yep. That checks out. That tracks.
Oh no. What's happened?
Paper check went south, and there was a firefight, and there's a reason that the circuit is meeting at the secondary rendezvous point and not the primary rendezvous point. Things went hot very quickly. Jaunet didn't make it out.
Has our base been discovered then?
Primary rendezvous point was compromised.
Okay.
Secondary one seems to be hold. Seems quiet so far, so I think we're good, but it looks like we'll be working out of the basement for the next remainder of our mission, I guess. I don't know if we're going to be able to set up another point before we ship out.
That's going to be tricky, since I know that many of the German soldiers tend to hang out in the cafe upstairs.
Well, how's your German?
If you want me to sing opera, it's fine. If you want me to speak with Germans, not so good.
Well, guess there's no time to learn like the present, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been good at learning.
That's what I like. That's what I like about you. You got a can-do spirit.
Well, there doesn't...
Lord knows if it's going to help us, but...
Not many options here, are there? I think we'll have to do this.
I think so.
All right, well, maybe we can lie low and not be noticed by them, but I'll think of a character I can put in place to deal with them should I have to speak with them.
Sounds like a good plan. Damn shame about Janae, though.
Yeah, oh, well, what do I do with this report that I was supposed to hand to her then?
I suppose I can take it. I'll fill in for the moment, and we'll get it routed back. We'll get it routed back around and shipped off to who knows where. I don't, whatever notes Janae was taking on the operation, it had to get torched, so we'll wing it. We'll see what happens.
All right, it's important that this report gets dealt with in the right way. It has a personal touch to it for me.
We'll make it happen.
Thank you, Captain.
But don't get soft out there.
Well, no, we can't afford to do that. No.
We've all got personal ties to this operation. We've got to stick to it.
Yes, well, that's why I'm here in the first place. And salute to our fallen comrade.
Yes, indeed. All right, get back out there. They're going to start looking for you soon.
Yes, sir.
And that's scene. So, now we segue into scene 3, Interlude. There are moments of calm between the storms of activities. This is an opportunity to remember what it was like living with the people in our section, the local people nearby, about the small acts of resistance or betrayal or affection that ordinary people are doing around us as we complete our operations. For example, Christine Granville was friends with a nursing nun who was using a cave along with 3 doctors and 8 other nuns to treat the badly wounded in secret. Sadly, something gave them away and their cave was discovered by the Nazis. The patients, priest, and doctor were shot. The nuns were sent to the camps. So, why don't you take... would you like to take the next scene, or shall I?
Sure, we can go back and forth if you'd like.
All right, that sounds great.
My card is a heart.
Oh, good. Love.
All right. As I go through the town that we're stationed near, since I have such a musical background, music's always been part of my life, I tend to hum a little tune now and then, and sometimes I attract some attention, and sometimes it's in a good way. Some of the children of the area start following me along and kind of skipping to the songs that I'm singing. There's so little other joy in their lives, so I've struck up a friendship with a number of them, which is really kind of nice, and it's actually turned out to be quite useful too. They have a lot more information than people think they do, so I'm enjoying my time with the children of this town.
Wonderful. Excuse me.
And I think that's scene.
Yes, indeed. My card is a clubs, which is misfortune. I think the misfortune here is, I am my operation of misrouting letters, making faulty equipment requests goes smoothly for a while, but there's a wrench thrown in it when a platoon of a German infantry force comes through, and suddenly there's just so much going on, there's so much noise and there's so many people and stuff that even the things that I'm doing are caught off guard, are thrown off. And I think that it becomes a case where even if I am consciously like misrouting things, the operation around me, like the mail operation, the equipment requests grow so complicated, and there becomes such a chain of command that it stops being something that just handing a letter to the wrong person will no longer kind of buck gums up their ranks. And so, like, the operation that, like, I've been deployed to do has sort of was successful for a time, but now has sort of fallen through and started to fail. Because now it's just easier. There's more people, which means more people are looking over things and going, oh, I got this by mistake. Let me reroute this to the correct source.
Sure. So you would have to come up with completely new processes that still might not work.
Yeah. And it's had to, it's sort of, and it's putting me in a tough position because, like, I am very much sort of a front-facing person in this mailroom, so I'm getting more responsibility handed to me, and I'm consciously trying to muck it up as best I can, but it's not going well.
With that many people, it seems that it might also be easier for people to trace that responsibility for things being mucked up back to you.
Mm-hmm. So I think more desperate measures will have to be taken if we want to fully, disable this sort of logistics point.
That sounds rational, yes.
Which brings us to our next scene, capture. Something goes wrong, you are captured. This is the chapter where it happens. They may zero in on your position. There may have been a simple mistake that you gave away when crossing the road. Maybe your papers were wrong. Maybe back home, there were a lot of mistakes made, and maybe they just sent you the wrong information and that got you caught. But this is sort of where it happens. A real life example, diamonds. Violet Sabot, though wounded, fought off German soldiers with a stun gun to give her fellow agents time to escape and warn the resistance of the unexpected German Panzer Division, which they had stumbled on, and was captured in the process. So, you went first last round, so I will go first. I drew death.
Ooh.
Good, because I had a very clear idea of what I wanted this scene to be.
All right.
Desperate measures. Desperate measures being, we have to start essentially guerrilla warfare, right? Active sabotage. Like, it is no longer enough to just sort of cause administrative chaos. Now it's got to be, sticky grenades on the bottom of cars and act like it's the only way. We know we have a limited amount of time, so we have to do it this way. And I think Adele, being the sort of front-facing person, kind of has to make the difficult decision of being, has to make the difficult call of being the person that stays put while everyone kind of gets out of Dodge, so to speak. She's got to be there to make sure that, like, the things that go wrong, the things that have to go wrong. So that means that they're definitely going to, like, there's no way that she's going to get out of this. And I think she consciously basically, pulls everyone aside and it's just like, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be routing the logistics, because if I'm not there, then they're going to come after everyone that I've associated with.
That's a gutsy move.
It's what has to happen.
Yes, it does.
So, it buys everyone time to get out.
All right.
And there's no way that I don't think there's any way that I'm not going to say it. I'll figure something out. I'll sneak out while bombs are going off. It'll be fine, but
we'll see each other again.
But important thing is that you and everyone else in this circuit makes it out safe.
All right. Thank you.
This is the job. This is what we signed up for, and honestly, I don't think I would have asked it to go another way. I mean, probably not being captured by the Nazis, but all things considered.
Yes, it is one of the dangers of the job, but we remember why we're here and why we're doing this.
Yes. And I think, like, Adele kind of grabs a, like a little canteen of water or whiskey and just sort of toasts you with it. Here's to the mission.
And I'll take it from her and drink as well. To the mission.
And so that's exactly what happens. Sabotage happens, bombs go off, and Adele is very quickly identified. Like, this is what kind of gives Adele away as not being on the official kind of register lists, and, fingers get pointed, but she's able to sort of navigate that, at least for the most part. Though I suppose we will find out. Well, let's have you draw, and then we'll find out if you were captured in this operation, if you were captured later, what happens. What happens to you?
All right, my next card is a diamond.
All right, success. So you are captured, but success for your circuit, or success for the resistance, success for the war effort. So although you are captured, good things happen all around.
Yes. So in befriending these children, I had mentioned that they know much more than the adults seem to think they do. And since they liked me, I took the occasion to gather from them intelligence that we could use to sabotage key points around the town, whether it be the mail or munitions or foodstuffs, whatever it was. And I made sure that once I learned the information from them, I went off to scout the locations myself. I did not want them involved in this. And I was scouting a location for a rail bridge that was coming into town. Mm-hmm. And I was able to get word of that back to our group so that the saboteurs in the group and in the resistance themselves could deal with that section of the train and the bridge. But in going back out to get more information along the way, I was captured. I tried to play it cool. I didn't have any documents on me at the time. I was trying to memorize the path there and the information that I could on the bridge. But they couldn't, the guards who captured me couldn't see any reason why I should be so far from the center of town when that's the only place they had really seen me. And in that moment, without an actual script in front of me, which is what I'm used to when I'm in the theater, I failed somehow. I was not able to convince them that I was who they had heretofore thought that I was. But the resistance had the information that it needed, and hopefully that bridge will be blown up soon, even though I'm in custody currently.
So, our next scene, prison. Now we've cycled back to the present. We are both in prison, and now we sort of see what our prison experience is like. We kind of see we've told our story up to this point, but we are held here as we are being interrogated. They're trying to like get through to us. I think as in real life, we don't break because in real life, none of the SOE broke and sort of revealed things. But so we're going to kind of explain what our prison experience is like. And a real life example, I'm going to draw a card and draw a club. Noor Khan escaped to the roof of her prison, but had the misfortune that an air raid happened at just the wrong time. All of the extra activity meant that she and her fellow escapees were spotted and recaptured. So, would you like to draw your card and tell us what happens?
Yes, I'm drawing my last card with some amount of trepidation here. I drew clubs.
Clubs, misfortune.
Mixed fortune. All right, so it has not been easy being here in this prison, of course. None of the guards believe that I am anything but a spy. There is nothing I can do to convince them otherwise. They continue to harass me day in and day out, hardly letting me sleep, not providing me much food. The floors that I have to sleep on are cold and dirty. There is a small group of women who I'm here with that I feel somewhat beholden to. We've become closer because we're all suffering in this area together. I tried to use some of my acting and singing to raise the morale a little bit, but it's so disheartening because the things that we're all suffering are so horrendous that maybe sometimes I see a hint of a smile on someone's face, but none of us believes this is going to end well. Every now and then I'm able to use some of my characterizations to maybe convince one of the guards who's not as hardline to give us an extra piece of bread or maybe a scrap of a blanket, but that's really not much in this scenario. Every now and then one of us disappears, and we all know what that means. It's probably where we are all headed eventually.
Mm-hmm. So, my card is actually a diamond, and so I think what it is as I am imprisoned, I think, what's the best way to excel at a job? It's to act like you've been there for years. And so I think that, as they force us into labor and they give us sort of menial jobs, my feigned expertise, they sort of quote unquote punish me with added responsibility, but that added responsibility gives me more access to bread and water and things like that. So I'm able to so as you're kind of getting through it with with the women that you're in there with, occasionally a little bit of extra food will go your way, and though you never actually see who's responsible for it, it is that I continue to sort of take on more work and sort of force myself to further and further kind of fill in jobs as I go, just to make sure that I have that little bit of extra access and can kind of kick people a little bit of extra support and sort of implicate myself further into the prison so that I can kind of help ease people back, help make things a little bit easier for people.
That is most excellent.
So, eventually, it comes time to put us on a train and send us to a camp. Now, what we're going to do for our final conclusion is we're going to each draw a face-down card. You're going to put it face down in front of you, and you can choose what you want to do with this card. If you can keep it for yourself, or you can keep it to yourself and be sent to a concentration camp, or you can donate that card to another player. Those players that have 2 or more cards in their hand escape or are rescued, and those with no cards died straight away, perhaps giving their lives to arrange the escape, or being caught in the escape and executed that way. So I know what my decision is immediately.
As do I.
All right, I'm giving you my card.
I figured that you might, and I am keeping mine.
Good. I figure Adele seems like the kind of person that would, she says she kind of, I think the closing beat of Adele's story is she says to herself, I promised everyone in my circuit that I was going to stay behind and make sure that they got out. One of my circuit didn't. And if I have to blow up half of this prison in order to get her out, I'm going to get out. So I think she arranges, she arranges this operation. She arranges this prison break. Stays behind, is executed for her troubles, but arranges it so that you and the other women are able to slip out under the cover of nightfall.
Another hero to celebrate later.
And I think that she pulls you aside briefly just before things happen, and she says, "I have one request for you."
Oh, of course. What can I do?
when you get back, because you're going to get back,
Okay.
take the stage and sing the greatest show of your career, of your life. For me.
It will take everything I have in me as an actress to do that without tears in my eyes for you.
A few tears wouldn't be unwelcome.
Well, maybe I'll choose a role that would be appropriate then. A very heroic role.
That'd be nice. I'd like that.
Of course, Adele, I will do this for you, for my friend.
And afterwards, at the wrap party, at the cast party, drink every bottle of wine that they bring out.
That I will do for you as well. Yes, of course. Good. In your honor. And the honor of all of our
all
comrades.
I ask.
I need to get home safely then, don't I?
That's an order.
Ha! I will take that order.
And
yes,
I
ma'am.
Throw you a salute and I say, to the mission.
Salute returned to the mission.
And so, we part ways. And now we play out our epilogue. We end our game with an epilogue. We tell the story of, who lives and who dies, who tells our story. So we each take a moment to talk about what happens next. For you, tell me what you went on to do, and for me, I will talk about who remembers and who honors me. So what do you do? What does after the war look like for you?
After the war, I never thought I would get to a period that would be after the war. I got into the SOE because I wanted to honor my husband and his homeland and put my whole self into this effort. I did not truly expect to be coming home. And yet, here I am, back in England. So yes, the war ended. We began rebuilding, but part of rebuilding is rebuilding the morale of the people. And I found that my acting, my singing could help greatly with that. I turned from doing simply operatic things and chamber concerts to doing things that were more meaningful, things about country and homeland and pride and love. And the first major show that I had, I went into with Adele firmly in my mind. And yes, I did indeed have tears in my eyes to be part of it, but I also had a fierce smile on my face because that's what she, I was going to say that's what she would have wanted, but no, that's what she ordered from me. Mm-hmm. She ordered me to succeed here. And when I finished, I could see tears in the eyes of much of the audience, and they leapt to their feet in applause. And while it was I on stage bowing and curtsying and accepting their flowers and their adoration, really, I was doing all of that for Adele and for all of my comrades. And we will bring our country and all of Europe back to its sense of self and pride and la liberté.
And I think Adele is remembered. I think Adele is remembered by her office. I think that they find out that she didn't come back. They find out that she was deployed and not just on vacation. Holiday. And I think that, for as gruff as this tiny little, textile plant is, this tiny little, shirt factory, I think that they have a very quiet and, calm celebration, right? Like, they have a little cake, and they have flowers and cards. And I think that they take off her birthday every year. I think that she was nothing if not good at her job. And I think that shined through as a spy, but it also shined through as a person. And I think that they recognized that she was someone that they were never fully able to replace in their office, and that she gave more than any of them for country and for the cause. And so I think that her office always misses her and always honors her, and eventually maybe it's even forgotten why they take off April 19th. Maybe it's just a day that you take off. It just becomes, an office holiday. But the people that were there at that moment will all know that it was because Adele was the best receptionist, was the best mail room attendant we ever had. And now she's gone because she gave her life so that other people could live. And we will not forget that.
Seems to me they might also have, in a little spot of grass near the factory, have planted a tree and maybe put up a small memorial. You can't really make Adele Employee of the Week or of the Month, but maybe it just says simply, to Adele, our best employee ever.
I like that. I like that a lot, and I think that's the note. I think we close on that visual, and I think that's game.
Ah, great.
What a wonderful game. I love this. Was great. This was fantastic.
It was so moving to be doing this. It was so simple, and yet, as a storytelling game, it really wasn't very challenging to get into, and it seemed to feed into itself as we went along. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the way that it I like the combination of, like, you know the beats that are coming, but there's that little bit of variation of, like, finding out the sort of little stops along the way that I think made it, gave it that little bit of, like, depth and texture that I think was really, really, it added to the beauty of it.
It did, and playing it with just two people made it feel very close and intimate, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I think that really kind of enhanced the experience for me, is playing it with just the two people and sharing that experience and sharing these stories in this kind of intimate setting. I think made it really special.
I would definitely agree with that. This was a great time, Jeff.
Thank you for coming on the show and playing it with me. This was fantastic.
I greatly enjoyed myself. It was a great use of my time, and I hope that your listeners enjoy hearing it.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Real quick, though, before we wrap up, is there anywhere that people can find you, your work online, that you'd like to share with them?
Oh. So I have a Facebook page. People can look there. Sometimes I post things about works in progress. It's under Gold Dragon Games. So that's who I am online, and you can find me on Twitter at the same thing. Or they can look up bfgcon.com and find out what's going on with the Big Fredder Gaming Convention, and maybe I'll see some folks there next year.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a delight. And now I'm going to throw it over to me in the future so that he can wrap up with the show.
All right.
Take a future me. Thanks, past me. And thanks again to Kiva for coming onto the show. That game was lovely. On May 7th, be sure to back A Cool and Lonely Courage on Kickstarter. Make it happen. It is a game that is very close to my heart, and I think that you'll really enjoy it. So go on May 7th, Kickstarter, Cool and Lonely Courage, back it, make it happen, make it a reality. And in the meantime, follow the game's creator, Alex White, at nalexwhite on Twitter. Then while you're on Twitter, follow us at Party of One Pod, then like the show on Facebook at facebook.com/partyofonepodcast. Join our Discord community at bit.ly/partyofonediscord. If you enjoyed the show, consider leaving us a nice iTunes review, a social media shout out, or word of mouth recommendation to a friend. All of those things help us grow and do bigger, better, and cooler things. You can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/JeffStormer. Support the podcasting, game design, community support work, all the cool things I do. The Patreon is the thing that helps me make those things happen. If you enjoyed this show, consider checking out All My Fantasy Children, a character creation, storytelling, and world-building podcast on the One Shot Podcast Network, powered by you. Every week, my best friend Aaron Catano-Saez and I take a listener-submitted prompt, and using some of our favorite tabletop role-playing games, we spin that prompt into an original fantasy character, populating a shared universe one story at a time. New episodes drop every Friday at allmyfantasychildren.com. Party of One is produced and edited, as always, by Jeff Stormer and Jen Frank. All music for the show comes from the song Infinite Lives by Megaran featuring the D&D Sluggers. If you'd like to inquire about advertising rates or about promoting a game on the show, you can reach out to me at partyofonepodcast@gmail.com. And that's it for me. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Remember to fight the forces of fascism every single day. Remember that self-love and self-care are radical and defiant acts of resistance. And as always, party on, everybody.